Sometimes, love stories don't end the way people imagine them to. But what if the truth came from someone close enough to see it all unfold yet quiet enough to have carried it for too long? Before we dive into the full story, take a moment to subscribe and join the growing community of people who live and breathe emotional storytelling. Because what you are about to hear is not just another story, it is a storm of truth, heartbreak, and the kind of silence that changes everything. The day Shen Yue heard Miles Wei's words, the room fell still. The lights from the studio reflected softly on her face, and the silence between them spoke louder than any argument they could ever have. She stood frozen, her eyes holding back the tears that had been living inside her for weeks. Dylan Wang's name had become both her comfort and her curse, the kind of name that echoed in every empty corner of her heart. Miles didn't want to say it. You could see it in the way his eyes avoided hers, in the way he pressed his lips together before finally speaking. He had been quiet for too long, watching Shen Yue fall deeper into something that wasn't holding her anymore. He finally said the words she was never prepared to hear. You have to let go. Dylan was never taking you seriously. The words struck like a whisper that carried the weight of 1,000 moments. Shen Yue blinked, confused at first, her chest rising and falling as she searched for the right words to defend someone who wasn't even there to speak for himself. How can you say that, Miles? You don't know what we had, she said softly, her voice trembling but still holding a faint trace of pride. Miles took a deep breath. He looked down at the floor, then back at her. I do know, he said quietly. I saw the messages he ignored, the calls he left unanswered. You waited, hoping he would come back, but he moved on long before you realized it. She turned away, pressing her hands against the table beside her as if steadying herself. Memories rushed through her mind. Dylan's laugh, his promises, his eyes when he looked at her during rehearsals. Those moments had felt real. They had built something together, or at least that was what she believed. But now, Miles' words made every one of those memories feel like scenes from a dream that had ended too soon. For a while, neither of them spoke. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. Shen Yue tried to fight the tears, but one escaped, rolling down her cheek slowly. Miles stepped closer, not to console her, but to make her see the truth. I'm telling you this not because I want to hurt you, he said. I'm telling you this because you deserve to stop waiting for someone who's already closed that chapter. Her breathing grew unsteady. She walked toward the window, staring into the evening sky. The city lights flickered below, reminding her of every night she stayed awake waiting for a message that never came. Dylan had promised her they would meet again after filming, that they would talk things out, that maybe they'd find their way back. But that never happened. He was seen with someone else weeks later. Miles watched her from behind, knowing he had done what needed to be done but also knowing that he had just shattered what was left of her faith in love. Shen Yue's voice finally broke the silence. Why did you have to tell me now, she whispered. Why couldn't you just let me keep believing, even if it was a lie? Because lies don't heal you, Miles said softly. They only make the pain last longer. She turned around, her face streaked with tears but her eyes shining with a strange calm. You think I didn't know, she said. I saw it in him. The distance. The coldness. I just didn't want to believe it. I wanted to think it was stress, work, anything but the truth. Miles nodded slowly. I know. But now you can start healing. You can stop waiting for someone who never planned to return. There was a long silence again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that comes when acceptance begins to form, quiet but undeniable. Shen Yue sat down, her fingers trembling as she wiped her tears. She looked at Miles, a faint smile on her lips, not of happiness but of strength. You've always been honest with me, she said. Even when the truth hurts. He nodded, his voice gentle. Because you deserve honesty, you. You always have. Outside, the rain began to fall softly against the window. The city blurred into streaks of silver and gray, matching the mood that filled the room. Shen Yue whispered to herself, maybe letting go is the only way to find peace again. Miles didn't reply. He knew she was finally beginning to see it for herself. The sound of her quiet sobs mixed with the rain, and though it was heartbreaking, there was also something healing in it. She wasn't crying out of weakness anymore. She was crying because she was ready to stop pretending she was okay. And in that moment, even though Dylan Wang wasn't there, it was as if the last piece of him slowly faded from her heart, making space for something new. By the time the rain stopped, Shen Yue stood up, her eyes red but determined. "Thank you," she whispered to Miles. "For telling me the truth." He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "You'll be okay, you. One day you'll look back and realize this was the moment you finally set yourself free." The story of Shen Yue and Dylan Wang was never about a perfect love. It was about the courage to face the truth when the fantasy fades, about the strength to heal even when the heart still remembers. So if you've ever held on to someone who's already gone, maybe this story is your reminder too. Sometimes letting go isn't the end. It's the beginning of becoming who you're meant to be. 3 weeks had passed since that night. Since the moment Miles Wei told Shen Yue the truth that shattered everything she had been holding on to. The city had moved on, the lights had dimmed, but inside Shen Yue, something was still quietly breaking apart. She hadn't spoken to Dylan since. She hadn't even mentioned his name. But the silence between them had become louder than any fight, heavier than any goodbye. One morning, as the studio prepared for another shoot, Dylan walked in. The same confidence, the same familiar calmness that always drew people to him. Yet behind his eyes was something different this time, something uncertain, something heavy. He had seen the headlines, the whispers, the stories saying that Shen Yue had finally let go. But part of him didn't believe it. He didn't want to. When he saw her sitting quietly in the corner of the dressing room, staring at her reflection, he hesitated. There she was, the same person he used to laugh with, to stay up late rehearsing lines with, to share quiet moments behind the scenes with. But now, she didn't even look up. She didn't need to. She already knew he was there. "You," he said softly. She didn't reply. He took a slow breath and stepped closer. "I know you've heard things. I know Miles said something to you." Her eyes finally lifted, calm but distant. "He didn't say anything I didn't already know," she said quietly. Dylan froze. The words hit him harder than he expected. He had come prepared to defend himself, to explain, to tell her it wasn't what she thought, but her tone, her eyes, they told him she had already moved beyond the need for explanations. It wasn't like that," he said. "You know me. You know what we had." She stood up slowly, facing him completely now. The studio lights reflected in her eyes, making them glisten like unspoken tears. "Do I?" she asked softly. "Because I thought I did. I thought I knew what we were, but maybe I was the only one who believed it." He wanted to reach out, to tell her that he cared, but every word felt too late. Every moment they could have fixed had already faded. "Miles was wrong," Dylan said. "I did care. I just didn't know how to show it. Everything got complicated, the schedules, the rumors, the distance. I didn't want to hurt you." She gave a sad smile. "You didn't want to hurt me, but you did anyway." He looked down. There was no excuse that could erase what she had been through. He thought keeping distance would protect her from the chaos of fame, from the endless speculation. But in doing so, he had made her feel invisible. "I saw you waiting," he said quietly. "You were always there, even when I didn't deserve it. I saw every message, every moment you reached out. I just didn't know how to respond without making things worse." Shen Yue took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "And now it doesn't matter. Because I learned that love isn't about waiting for someone to come around. It's about knowing when to stop breaking your own heart." Dylan swallowed hard. The silence between them stretched again, but this time, it wasn't full of pain. It was full of realization. "I never stopped caring about you," he whispered. "I know," she said softly. "But caring and loving are not the same." Those words hung in the air, heavy but true. Miles walked in quietly a few minutes later, stopping at the doorway as he saw them standing there. He didn't say a word. He could feel the energy in the room, the quiet end of something that once meant everything. Shen Yue turned to Dylan one last time. "You were a beautiful chapter," she said. "But I'm ready to write the next one." Dylan's chest tightened. He wanted to stop her, to say something that could change everything, but for once, he knew he couldn't. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about her choosing herself. As she walked past him, Miles nodded gently, like someone who understood that even truth has its own cost. Dylan stood there, still, staring at the door after she left. The echoes of her footsteps seemed to linger longer than they should have. Later that night, Dylan found himself alone in his apartment, scrolling through old photos. The memories were soft, full of laughter and warmth, but they also hurt to look at. He realized then that Miles hadn't betrayed him. He had saved her. And maybe that was what real friendship looked like. The next morning, Dylan posted a short message online. No long paragraphs, no dramatic words, just one sentence. "Some things end so others can begin." Fans flooded the comments, asking what it meant, wondering if it was about Shen Yue. But those who truly knew, knew. Shen Yue saw the post too. She smiled quietly to herself and whispered, "Finally." The pain hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled her. The love hadn't faded, but it had transformed. It had become something stronger, something peaceful. Miles visited her later that day. "You did it," he said. She nodded. "We both did." He smiled. "And he'll be okay too." She looked at him, calm and steady. "I hope so." The sun set softly outside the window as they sat in silence, both understanding that sometimes closure doesn't come from words or apologies. It comes from finally accepting what was and being grateful for what will be. That night, as the city lights shimmered in the distance, Shen Yue closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She no longer felt the weight of waiting. She felt free. And for the first time in a long time, so did Dylan. The end wasn't loud. It wasn't full of drama. It was quiet, real, and honest. The kind of ending that hurts, but heals. So if you've ever held on too long, this story is your reminder. Some people come into your life to teach you how to love, and others come to teach you when to let go. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. More fictional emotional stories are waiting, stories that will make you feel, remember, and believe again. Stay tuned, because the next chapter might just be your story too.